It starts automatically. There we go.
Great. Yeah, so
All
we
right.
just started recording. So, thanks again for those who are joining and for helping me back today to talk about expert witness work. It's really great to have the chance to reach a lot of audiences, and especially you being a surgeon. Surgery is one of those specialties that has so many different niches, and it's also one that tends to reimburse better than some of the other specialties may. So it is a great opportunity to have a very dense opportunity in your very few free hours to make a real
Yeah.
financial difference in your life.
Yeah. So I guess how did you end up getting started and interested in this, and like tell us a little bit about your story with expert witness work.
Right. So this is a real lemon to lemonade type story. I went through training and I don't think I knew anything about expert witness work. I knew that medical malpractice lawsuits could occur, but didn't know any details about it. I knew you had to have insurance and it was kind of a scary thing, but literally just did not know any knowledge of the inner workings and the players that were involved besides patients, doctors, and lawyers. And then early in my career, I saw a patient in her early 20s who presented actually for follow-up after having initially been evaluated by a partner in my practice. And I was at this point a fellowship trained breast imager. So, very up in the field and my knowledge base. And I remember seeing her in follow-up and she felt a lump and I recommended a biopsy. And she did not want to have a biopsy because she said she was afraid of needles. And in my, relatively junior state of my career and desire to not feel like I was potentially characterizing her badly in the medical record, I didn't document her particular comment about her fear of needles. I simply stated that the decision had been made to do short-term follow-up. And to this day, would that have made a difference in the end? I don't know, but it did really educate me on the importance of documentation. So she came back, unfortunately, delayed for care later and was found to have breast cancer. So one in a million case, of a woman in her early 20s with an aggressive form of cancer from which she unfortunately later died and was named in the lawsuit, as were multiple people. Ultimately, we settled, even though it was a strong case. And I worked very hard in my own defense and to understand the process and to really present the information and deposition and in interactions with the different parties to help educate on that. And ultimately, we made the decision to settle because she had gone to all the local news medias and appeared on TV programs advocating for patients to tell their doctors they should evaluate things that are wrong or they could miss things like cancer. And because my attorney thought that it would be such a sympathetic case, we opted to settle because we were concerned it just wouldn't get an impartial trial. So we did. That was several years and very difficult experience. At that point, I was very early in my career and I had everything it felt in front of me. My kids, I think, were still in diapers at that point, and a mortgage, a buy-in for a partnership. I had all the rest of this lifelong dream ahead of me. And it really forced me to evaluate personally, what did that experience mean? What did I take that to mean about my own capabilities and where I would go in the future? And, the good news is there's a happy ending to it. I practiced successfully then, for all this time and, a nearly 20-year career, and really came to love becoming an expert because my lawyer in my malpractice case told me that when everything was said and done, I should become an expert witness. And at the time I thought, that's totally crazy. Why would I ever get back involved in something like this ever again? Like, I want to run screaming for the hills and never do this. And then I realized it wasn't so crazy and that I really had learned so much with that process, developed, as a physician, that it really made me mindful about the practices that we do, the literature, and the value of experience. And so when someone called out of the blue, I said yes to reviewing a case. And then I learned I needed to learn everything about being an expert, which no one had ever taught me. And so this course has really been that product of my desire to help everybody else learn how to do this, but without all the trial and error.
I think, yeah, that's the best part. My favorite part about the course is really it walks through, and there's so many things before you go through it that you don't even think of, and it just helps, even just how to find the opportunities, which I think is where most people probably, you tell me, but I think where most people probably get hung up. I know for me, before learning from you, that's kind of where I was a little bit lost in the woods. um, I'm wondering if you can comment on one of the things that a lot of people will tell me, or if I'll bring up expert witness work, is they'll go, "Oh no, I don't want to do that because that involves, like ratting out other physicians or something like that." Which, I obviously know is not the case, but I think a lot of times that's internally what some physicians feel, and maybe why they stay away from this. When, I mean, I want to hear what you think, but I think a lot of times it's kind of the opposite.
Right. And it's interesting. It really is an issue of mindset, how you approach the work. And so the great thing is, I don't have any concerns about ratting people out because I don't rat people out. I evaluate cases objectively based on my skills, training, and expertise. And I use that along with my case review skills to evaluate if the appropriate course of treatment was performed, if it was above or below
Mhm.
the standard of care, compared to what an average person would be doing in a similar circumstance, similar type of practice. And so it's not those Hail Mary, cases where you make this great save. It's really, if you are keeping up with your literature, if you are appropriately trained in how you practice, that those are the skills that you would apply to a case. You don't have to be always right. And so I review cases the same way, whether it's for a plaintiff attorney or defense attorney. And that's how lawyers really value that information, is because your role as an expert is to educate, to teach the lawyers and then subsequently maybe a judge or jury about your knowledge in that medical case, and then help explain why the people involved opted for the correct choice of action, or whether
Mhm.
maybe nothing could be done differently and still a bad outcome or no bad outcome could occur. And so it's really a mindset issue with that, and a desire to have that educational role that makes the difference. And so the best experts go into cases not trying to tell the lawyer what they think the lawyer wants to hear, but really giving that honest and objective opinion. And that's where attorneys really appreciate that about me and the way that I approach cases, especially doing blind reviews and being very cognizant of the process. And so that's part of what I teach people, is really that process to make sure that the review they're doing is about the medicine involved. So it's not a question of, person being at fault or not. It's truly about the medical care. And that's also how we learn as experts, and how we become great resources for our practices and our patients ultimately with better care.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to you before, and like you had such a great way of framing it that just made a lot of sense to me. Where, if no malpractice occurred and stuff, you're the trained voice, sort of bringing reason into the conversation and stuff, and you're defending someone who was practicing well and trying their best. And if real malpractice did occur, it's also your responsibility as a physician to protect the patients. That's one of the commitments we make, and so it is a really important job. And you say, well, someone else can do it. Well, not everyone's going to be as well trained as you or have the experience you have, and you don't want, I think we all worry about, if we're named in a lawsuit, like if the expert witness is a loose cannon or is just not a reliable or really a well trained or knowledgeable physician, that's a scary prospect. So it is really kind of lending to the whole medical community.
It's true. It really is a service. And a lot of us may not even know that we might have been sued if not for an expert reviewing the case and finding there was no merit or that nothing was done wrong. A lot of states are what are called affidavit states, where in order, like North Carolina, for example, where in order to file a lawsuit, you have to have an expert who's willing to attest that someone did something wrong. If someone reviews the case and says, no, there wasn't anything done that was wrong here, there was no harm, then that case may never go forward, but you may never know. And so we, I think, are not aware of some of those backstage happenings with some of these, potential cases that never see the light of day. And it's definitely true. I also now teach a new course on medical board case review. There are thousands of complaints that are made by the public to medical boards in every state in which, physicians are licensed. And we do play a very important role in evaluating those cases, because who else? There is no one better, and there is no one else qualified to review these kinds of cases except us. And it's
Right.
true. You get what you pay for, and you can find folks, who are willing to say just about anything, for pretty, lower amount of money. But that's something that I think, and you touched on this before, is how do people get cases? That's where you get into marketing. And that's where, as physicians, I think, especially if you're essentially, you think you're asking for money. I mean, you're getting paid for work. Like, that's the
Right.
beautiful thing about it. Like, just like
Right.
our day jobs, even though we have a wonderful service component and fulfillment from how we serve humanity, it's paid work. Because if we weren't paid, we would do other things, with our lives for so much of them, because of the sacrifice and the years that we have spent in honing this craft and our knowledge and everything. But that's, that is definitely a skill that is really learnable, and something that's very teachable as to how you can not think of it so much as salesmanship, but offering your skills, to showcasing your um, individual abilities within medicine that you've worked so hard to accomplish.
Yeah. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit. I want to go into kind of like the course overview, but I want to start with the headliner. What is the type of kind of compensation that you get from expert witness work? Because then the question is always, well, what's the return on investment, or anything with this course, which I think this is one of the ones with the higher. And so let's lay that out for everyone. How does that work?
Sure. Each case usually starts with a 3 to 5 hour retainer at a typical hourly rate of $500 to $700 per hour. For a surgical specialty, you may be looking at $700, $800, $900 an hour for some surgical specialties. And so it doesn't take more than 3 to 4 hours a week at those levels to make 100,000 a year as an expert. And I've had
Yeah.
students who have done that, who have put their skills to work, who have applied themselves, and they have made 5, 6 figures, with the work that puts those skills to do the job. So with the cost of the course, the investment is $3,497. So let's round it to 3,500. But that's typically the retainer in one case. And because the most common mistake that I see physicians make is undercharging, and it's such a funny thing. We have these priceless skills, and yet there is a market value, but you have to know the right people who have that information. And then the instinct is really to say, well, maybe I'll get more work if I charge a little less, or it's bad to charge more. It's market rate. This is business. And so when you start out charging that appropriate rate, $500, $600, $700 an hour, you almost immediately make that money back with your first case. Also, this course can also be tax deductible because it's a business expense. And so some people, you can deduct that mentally, take off 25, 30%, depending on your tax situation. This not being personalized financial advice, as you always tell people. And also because it does carry CME, category 1 credits of up to 12 hours for the course, a lot of people have been able to use their CME funds from work. So there's a lot of ways to make that money work for you. But the most important investment is in this skill for yourself, putting together something that then pays dividends over the long run. I mean, I it's really wonderful to see students go through this transformation. Initially, it's like spending money. For some people, you make a few $1,000s, do a few cases, and you get to have some fun with it. And then, as I found, when you make more money with it, you feel like you need to get a little serious about it. And that's when the real fun starts. You buy back
Yeah.
your time. You stop working those extra nights and weekends that just cost you so much in taxes. And for W-2 income, you you start maybe reframing your schedule, go part-time like I did, spend more time doing the things in life that you love, in addition to probably loving your doctor job even more. So it's really a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Then before we jump into some questions, can you just walk us through a little bit the course itself, what it includes and entails, and kind of how it works?
Sure. The course really follows the arc of a medical malpractice case as an expert is involved. So from the first time a lawyer calls you, when you don't otherwise know what to say, we go step by step, what to say, how to talk about your own credentials, how to put them in a CV that will highlight with bullet points your niche areas of expertise clinically, and then how to communicate that as well. We talk about some of the business aspects of building an expert witness practice, like having a contract. How much do you charge? How do you talk to people about what you charge? How do you write an invoice? I give a template so you can just plug and play numbers, and that's how I did it for years. And then following that arc of a case, from evaluating a case, how do you organize materials? How do you know what to do or not to do with emails with attorneys, or actual taking notes and documents, through deposition, and then all the way through trial? So it's pretty fun to help people kind of see that become reality. And then we end up with a bonus business building module where I go through the basics of how to form a business if you want to use an LLC, some tax considerations to think about, and other benefits of doing the work.
That's huge too, because that's a component, I think, like you said, until you start making a little money and then you start making more, and you go, wait a second, how should I be, kind of constructing this as a business entity? So that's a huge thing. Okay, cool. Well, let's open it up. If anyone has any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat, or you can definitely unmute yourself and just ask away. I'll give a couple minutes, a couple seconds for those to start coming in if there's any. In terms of like finding the opportunities, how quickly do you see your students start to get those opportunities?
I think the record was an hour after starting the course. One of my typical, go-getter students picked up the phone and called the lawyer in the greater New York area, and made that first contact and said, I'm learning how to do this and I want to take malpractice cases. And so that's how it starts, is that desire, that reaching out, that willingness to get those phone calls for when people start getting cases. And something that I've really expanded on over time as I've worked hard to grow my own network. And I teach also an entire module on marketing. How do you reach out to lawyers? How do you make a database in Excel? It's not med school hard, but it is something that if you don't think about it when it's simple, then it gets harder later when you have more, complexity. So teaching people how to reach out to lawyers, how to market their own skills. And ultimately, I now offer a shortcut for people who want to invest in a mailing that I send quarterly to my 10,000 lawyer database. And so people can sign up for that as an additional cost after the course. Or if they haven't taken the course, actually, if there are some experts who have not and who've still signed up, I send a blast email out quarterly that goes to 10,000 lawyers, and people from that typically get cases within minutes to hours. So, and
Wow.
then many times over, marketing, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because people share your contact information with other lawyers. They're in Facebook groups too, where it's not just like a doctor thing that we all do. So they give that word of mouth and that personal endorsement for people that they know. And I also refer experts to lawyers who reach out to me, who, when they're looking for a specific good fit for an expert in their case.
Awesome. Jay has a couple great questions here. The first is, what's the general time commitment for a case?
So I'll answer that two different ways. Usually people are asking, how many hours a week am I doing work on it, when they ask that, the time commitment. And so for me, for years, I just did a few hours in the morning, at 5 till 6:30 in the morning or something before I'd go and work, or the kids got up, and all on my free time. So, the great thing with expert witness work, especially since COVID, is almost all of it is remote on your own time and flexible. Trial is the only thing that's very rare. Typically 1 to 2 cases out of 100 will go to trial. So 5 a.m. I'm
I
a
know.
morning person, but you can do it when you like it too. If you're an owl, night owl, you do it whenever you like. Maybe people go to bed and you review cases. That's the beauty of the flexibility of it. It was just the time that worked for me when the house was quiet and I could do that. Yeah, it was always a great feeling making more money before breakfast than I did during an entire day of clinical work. Like, I'd kind of shake my head at it,
Yeah,
but
that's when you
well,
realize. Yeah.
winning. And so, it's usually a few hours a week, but even with the level of marketing that I have done over years now, it has never been overwhelming because I've also learned how to juggle my schedule, how to work with that time flexibility, and I've decreased my clinical time as I've made up that income doing this, and it's, bought my life back, from having been full-time partner, always there and working nights, evenings, weekends, and everything. So, it is very flexible and very workable with that. The other way to answer in terms of time commitment is, how long do cases last? And so some cases are a few hours. You review them, you give your opinion, and they may or may not proceed with the case. They may be done, and that's it, and you move on. Or cases may proceed. You may do a few hours here or there from time to time. And then, again, 1 to 3 cases in 100 may go to trial. And for that, you may go for a day, 2 at most, depending on your travel time. Cases themselves, though, can last years. So this is not a job to start doing after you retire. You do need to be working clinical work. Usually that lower limit threshold is about a day a week of clinical work will qualify you in most states to be an expert. And I did see in the chat also a question that I do get a lot, which is, it's usually a flavor of, does my specialty have cases? And my usual answer is, if you carry malpractice insurance, there are cases in your specialty because someone gets sued. And actually, we think about, neurosurgery, very litigious, but really when you look at the denominator, there are so many patients who see internal medicine, family docs, pediatrics, that the denominator is so great that there are a lot of cases in those areas as well. So any case or any specialty in which you're seeing patients and there's liability, there's going to be medical malpractice cases.
You brought up a great question that I have, which is, what are the usual credentials or standards to be an expert witness?
Yeah, the number one I'm usually asked is about licensing. You do not have to be licensed in every state that you take cases. You just have to be licensed. So, licensed to practice medicine in a state. I have had some Canadian students, and so, is it applicable to other countries? I can't teach towards their legal system, but the skills that I teach as an expert are exportable in your role as an expert. But you'll know better your own legal system, and the lawyers ultimately will teach you those things as well. So yeah, it's the qualifications. Usually board certification is desirable. This may depend, though, on your specialty and the percentage of time that's expected. So, that's going to vary according to specialty, but in general, that is preferable. And number of years out of training, usually 1 to 2 years out of training is sufficient to start to review cases. But if you've done some additional work, like you have a PhD, you've done a lot of research, that may accelerate that somewhat if you have additional qualifications that could be valuable in the case too. So some of this stuff depends, but those are some of the general rules of thumb.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone for Gretchen before we wrap up? All right. Well, Gretchen, thank you Jane
Yeah.
says thank you as well.
Yeah.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I think this is an incredible resource, and one that I know I've learned a lot from as am now starting to reach out and things like that as well. So thank you. How can people learn about the course and everything like that, or reach you if they have questions?
Sure. So you'll probably give a link
Yes.
for yours, so people would know that if they go through your link, that they're supporting your role also in your support of my course, which I really appreciate. And if you want to ask me questions directly, I'm at admin@theexpertresource.com. And a couple just nuts and bolts things about the course, just in case people realize afterward, oh, I forgot to ask about how does the course work, just nuts and bolts wise. Again, 12 hours, category 1 CME eligible. So you may be able to use your CME money from work. Also, you get all the modules at once. So if you want to do it Netflix style and just do one after the next, you can absolutely do that. Go whatever pace you want. The modules are recorded, so you can watch them on your own schedule and you have lifetime access. Also, we have 4 live Q&As. They are Fridays at lunchtime. So again, they're recorded. So if you can't attend live, you just shoot me the question in the dedicated Facebook group or by email, and I will make sure to cover it during that Q&A session. And then those are also recorded. You can watch them whenever works for you. I've designed this to be just as flexible and accessible with everybody's crazy schedules as I possibly could. So, because that's how
Awesome.
you do expert witness work in the end.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gretchen. I appreciate your time, and thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.